Hey, all right, we're here. All right, so it's only about 200 pages. Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. I have been meaning to tap into a little bit of socialist and communist literature um, to do demonstration in real time the way I've demonstrated things that I am I have heard I will support. Now I'm reading some stuff that I heard that I would dislike a great deal. I've been told that the prime majority of much of the social strategies of many a character, particularly on the left, because it's a very left-hand path philosophy as I understand it, is Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals is kind of a very much an actual rule book that I've been told has all these different segments in it, where as you read it, you'll see how all these things were implemented and see how you can kind of see that you don't really see this kind of behavior inherited by prior generations, right? That's all the stuff I've heard, right? We're going to listen and we're going to start getting into this a little bit. Going to read this for a little bit, an hour or so. You know, maybe we're going to get through a chapter or two. I'm not sure. We're gonna take it easy. It's not. It's. I don't expect this to be a very high vocabulary read. You know, this is not going to be like the War and Peace transformational thing, I don't think. Granted, it's not here to convince you to be a radical. It's here to tell you how to be a radical, how to apply radicalism. That's effectively my comprehension here. So, here we are. So, he says that it's practical and realistic, right? So, he is promising that these are practical primers and that this is realistic radical behavior. This is published by Random House out of New York. I find some of these in these, like, I'm going to read little technical pieces because this is a political book. Acknowledgements. This chapter of Means and Ends was presented in the Auburn Lecture Series at Union Theological Seminary. Some of the other sections of this book were delivered in part in lectures before the Leaders of America series at the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena, California, Yale Political Union, New Haven, Connecticut, April 1970, the Willis D. Wood Fellowship Lecture, Amherst College, Amherst, Massachusetts, May 1969. You know, most liberals I ever meet in this area, you know, like, they don't act like this, even though, like, they seem to, like, almost, like, get the results because the West Coast acted like this. That's kind of like what's weird about, like, New England, I think. It gets all this, you know, it does all the same liberal policies as the left coast, but it seems that they actually execute it better, right? Not that it was accomplishing good things by its good execution. American Society of Newspaper Editors, Washington, D.C., 68, U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Right. So this book is going through all, you know, all this stuff is going through all the credentials. This isn't a fringe book. That's what's crazy, right? You're not talking about a fringe book. On the Importance of Being Unprincipled by John Herman Randall Jr. is reprinted by permission of the publishers from American Scholars. Okay. I'm not going to go through every little tidbit here, but I did want to acknowledge something that I noticed while I was peeking through right here. Personal acknowledgments to Jason Epstein for his prodding patience. Prodding, you say. I have no idea if this Epstein is related, but he is Jewish. I took a quick look. So anyway, understanding and for being a beautiful editor. Beautiful. Anyway, to Cicely Nichols for the hours of painstaking editorial assistance, to Susan Rabiner for being the shock absorber between the corporate structure of Random House and this writer. Okay, that means meaning Susan's the one who was playing face, being like, no, Saul's not trying to destroy Western civilization. Don't be crazy, Random House. Don't be crazy. To Georgia Harper, my heartfelt gratitude for the months of typing and for staying with me through the years of getting this book together. To Irene. It's a 200-page book, and it took him years to put it together. Years. Must have been all the cocaine. I don't know if he did cocaine. It took years to write the thing. You probably went through a few years of living a radical experience by which you wrote the book, right? You know, you didn't have a radical youth and then wrote the book after you figured it out. You basically went through a radical youth and then wrote about it the second you had the forthwith to write a book about your radical situation. I bet that's what happened. I don't know the history, right? Okay, so this page is where the famous Lucifer quote is, but there's some other quotes. Where there are no men, be thou a man. Rabbi Hillel. A man. Be a man where there are no men. Okay. Out of context, I live by that, don't I? I've mentioned the story where I was at the LA Fitness locker room and a dude was going to throw down and beat up a guy, and I squared off. Me and another dude squared off on him to tell him not to do that, right? And we resolved the situation as best we could while he was still grunting and growling about it. Thomas Paine. Let them call me rebel and welcome. I feel no concern from it, but I should suffer the misery of devils, were I to make a whore of my soul. Thomas Paine. Okay. I feel no concern from it, but I should suffer to make a whore of my soul. Interesting. You call me rebel and welcome. I feel no concern from it, but I should suffer the misery of devils were I to make a whore. Okay. All right. To not make a whore of it is, see, I agree with this too, right? This is gaslighting, right? This if this book contains the results that we have so alleged that we would have seen throughout all of this shit, including how they're arguing on the inner on the streets of the inner sanctuary cities, and all the matters of illegal immigration process, as well as criminal justice process for minorities as such. Lest we forget at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical from all our legends, mythology, and history, and who is to know where mythology leaves off and history begins, or which is which? The first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer. So he quotes himself. That's like his quote. And he making that, it's, right. It's like, he's playing Titan, right? He's playing Prometheus, right? He wants to act with forethought to rob the gods of the power that makes them tyrants over men. Right? So, all that sounds great. That sounds practically fucking universal. All that sounds very agreeable, right? Like, yeah, he's like, and if you don't know anything on an esoteric level, right? I mean, like, he could have said Prometheus. He wanted to say Lucifer. He needed to invoke it that way. All right. Prologues. Here are the various chapters. All right. Let me check in with you guys real quick. I don't see nobody in the chat room, and I probably don't expect to see anybody. I have noticed a a good decline. Where am I over here? Let me check in with you guys. All right, you guys can hear me. Good. I'm going to turn that up. I sound like I'm a little low. All right. Put that on pause. Yeah, so I don't expect much. I mean, I've lost people. Like, before I get started here, where am I here? Let me actually look. Last I checked, I think I was at like 648 or 649, right? Like, I've lost. I may have straight up just lost like everybody that subbed to me after the Thomas Sheridan affair, right? Yeah, that's not, and I've talked about that quite a few times. Not surprising. Um, that's okay. I mean, like, I can see right now that it looks like most of them are going to be agreeable with Thomas that um, it's too far stretched to say that this was a Mossad thing, right? But anyway, or at the very least, it's not worth it to talk about. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why it's like that, other than he needs to stay focused on what fits with his ability to tackle the liberation of Ireland. So I'm his fucking ally, whether he and his people can't get behind me with what I am doing right now, either way. So anyway, let's do this. Because I think that these are the lessons, the powerful lessons that we ought to learn. We blow this up so it's easier to read. There we go. Prologue. The revolutionary force today has two targets, moral as well as material. Its young protagonists are one moment reminiscent of the idealistic early Christians, yet they also urge violence and cry, "Burn the system down." They have no illusions about the system, but plenty of illusions about the way to change our world. It is to this point that I have written this book. These words are written in desperation, partly because it is what they do and will do that will give meaning to what I and the radicals of my generation have done with our lives. They are now the vanguard, and they had to start almost from scratch. Few of us survived the Joe McCarthy Holocaust of the early 1950s. The Joe McCarthy Holocaust. Holocaust? Holocaust! Oh, yeah, yes, because it was the communist burnings. You were burned, right? The early 50s. And of those, there were even fewer whose understanding and insights had developed beyond the dialectical materialism of orthodox Marxism. Okay, hold on, that's interesting. Let me get that second part again. and there were even fewer whose understanding and insights had developed beyond the dialectical materialism of orthodox Marxism. Okay, so he is he must be trying to reframe the spirit of Marxism. That would sound like a calling to respirit Marxism, to update perhaps the Marxist attitude. That would be my imagination. My fellow radicals, who were supposed to pass on the torch of experience and insights to a new generation, were not there as the young looked at the society around them. It was all, in their words, materialistic, decadent, bourgeois in its values, bankrupt and violent. Is it any wonder that they rejected us in toto? In total? Did he mean total? What is toto? Other than not in Kansas. Or the rains in Africa. Wait, was that Toto? I think so. Anyway, today's generation is desperately trying to make some sense out of their lives and out of the world. Most of them are products of the middle class. They have rejected their materialistic backgrounds, the goal of a well-paid job, suburban home, automobile, country club membership, first-class travel, status, security, and everything that meant success to their parents. They have had it. They watched it lead their parents to tranquilizers, alcohol, long-term endurance marriages or divorces, high blood pressure, ulcers, frustration, and the disillusionment of the good life. Well, so thus far I'm actually on Saul's side here. He's fucking right. This is he's talking about like he's talking about the first product line of boomers and what the first fucking boomers made of themselves. Or at least the first of the, quote, greatest generation after the war. Something along those lines, right? You're going to have a mix of both if we're talking about the 70s over here. The 60s, really, when it's conceptualized in the mind. Because we're talking about 70, 71. They have seen the almost unbelievable idiocy of our political leadership in the past. Political leaders ranging from the mayors to governors to the White House were regarded with respect and almost reverence. Today, they are viewed with contempt. This negativism now extends to all institutions, from the police and the courts to the system itself. We are living in a world of mass media which daily exposes society's innate hypocrisy, its contradictions, and the apparent failure of almost every facet of our social and political life. The young have seen their activist participatory democracy turn into its antithesis, nihilistic bombing and murder. The political panaceas of the past, such as the revolutions in Russia and China, have become the same old stuff under a different name. The search for freedom does not seem to have any road or destination. The young are inundated with a barrage of information and facts so well overwhelming that the world has come to seem an utter bedlam, which has them spinning in frenzy, looking for what man has always looked for from the beginning of time, a way of life that has some meaning or sense. Now, let me say right here, that's a little bit of rhetoric, right? Because, dude, he's talking here 1971, right? Go listen to fucking Manly P. Hall talking, in earlier times and talking about, and it sounds the same, right? We can always be a little skewed on certain things, right? Because you can have, if you have a shit idea of history, you can't make a historical commentary on the current events. If you've got if you know a lot about history, you can talk about how this reminds you of a historic event that you know. But if you are a deep researcher like me, you can get a much stronger sense, right? I can talk about the pandemic, and, it wasn't until we were halfway through the pandemic, did you realize that they actually handled the Spanish flu the same fucking way, with the mask mandating at the very least. So we actually have been here before. That's what's interesting about this, is that we had been there in our great-grandparents' lifetime. So that's like your forefathers, right? There's forefathers and then there's ancestors. And I'm not quite sure where the cutoff point is. Okay. So anyway, so my point is that this rhetoric, there's always the excuse. There's always somebody's excuse who is not a kid growing up in it, and is not the adults that made the world, that's raising the kids, who's looking at the level of distraction in the world and complaining about it like it's new. Medea as a goddess has always been here, whether there was newspapers and books and television and radio or not. A way of life means a certain degree of order where things have some relationship and can be pieced together into a system that at least provides some clues to what life is about. Men have always yearned for and sought direction by setting up religions, inventing political philosophies, creating scientific systems like Newton's, or formulating ideologies of various kinds. This is what is behind the common cliche, getting it all together. Despite the realization that all values and factors are relative, fluid, and changing, and that it will be possible to get it all together, only relatively, the elements will shift and move together just like the changing pattern in a turning kaleidoscope. Right? So as you can see, as he's going through this prologue, it's just like he's not trying to pitch you on what he's about to tell you to do. He's just telling the person that's already interested in doing something, aka being a radical, as to the rationalization for the changes that you are going to make reading this book, to begin as your primer to frame things of your conversation correctly. In the past, the world, whether in its physical or intellectual terms, was much smaller, simpler, and more orderly. It inspired credibility. Today, everything is so complex as to be incomprehensible. What sense does it make for men to walk on the moon while other men are waiting on welfare lines, or in Vietnam killing and dying for a corrupt dictatorship in the name of freedom? So here we go with this, right? So there's some more very familiar rhetoric, right? And once again, like here he is, he's calling out the war pigs. I have agreement here. Hey, what's up, Tim? But then also, over here, he's talking about in our own backyard, the spite for our progress while welfare exists. That's an unfair equivalency, because the person on welfare was also a person who went to school. Unless they made mistakes that kept them out of school. And that's their own damn fault if they made mistakes that kept them out of school. But some people will say there's no such thing as somebody making their own damn mistakes in that way, shape, or form. It was the insensitivity of people that don't understand them in their struggle socioeconomically. And let's also be for real, racially. Because when you start bringing up Oh, but what about the people on welfare? Everybody, like the people on welfare, like if they're not interested, if they're okay because the welfare check came in and, it's the weekly struggle, but oh, look at that, you're still here, you're this particular week, and it's whatever. It's just like, it's up to you to do the thing with your situation, right? It's it's just like you don't have the internet back in 1960, whatever. You go to the library and you pick up like a doctor's thing, and you read up and you try and figure out what's wrong with you in a book, and then you maybe can boil down your condition to a specific thing, and you can talk to a specific doctor about it, and instead of getting a runaround by other physicians, you already went to the doctor knowing your shit, and you're just like, let's talk, and then you have a back and forth with what the doctor knows versus what you found. And then the doctor can do what he can for you, but from a place of superior understanding what he can do for you because of how much work you did to figure it out for yourself. So you had your own independent report that gives him the idea of what to look for. This was how I communicated with the doctor that was assigned to me when I went into the office for my kidney stone a few years ago. I had to go through that back and forth. It was very frustrating because he can't give me nutritional advice. Apparently he can now. But anyway, today's generation faces all this and says, I don't want to spend my life the way my family and their friends have. I want to do something, to create, to be me, to do my own thing, to live. The older generation doesn't understand, and worse, doesn't want to. I don't want to be just a piece of data to be fed into a computer or a statistic in a public opinion poll, just a voter carrying a credit card. To the young world seems insane and falling apart. And, when you frame it like that, you would have thought that, they were a year or two out from a complete global economic crash. They had to have a hardcore market correction with the oil crisis, and then they had to fucking recover from the fallout of that, but nobody fucking starved. The people that suffered the most are the people that were so naive as to walk through life with only one fucking plan. Why do we have to dole out welfare because somebody decided to live with one fucking plan that they were wrong about in their life? Right? I had a certain plan about being a musician that made me make very foolish work ethic choices. And I had to stop doing that because I was losing respect for myself. So the world is insane and falling apart, but it's not the whole world, it's just your fucking world. Right? You're blaming someone else, but guess what? That person, he took that thing that was falling apart, he fixed it, and then he came back the next day and somebody came by out of spite and broke it. And then when we went after him, he complained about it because nobody helped him, and that's why he broke it down. And he said, you never asked for help. We didn't know you needed help. It's rude to impose help on people unsolicited. We have to know what you want, and we have to know that you want it done. Some people don't want help getting a thing done. Some people want to avoid help altogether. And as long as they don't fucking hurt anybody, who cares? Right? But of course, some people were very cold, socially cold, and so that changes the meaning. of this leave you alone. Like, no, don't leave me alone. I don't want to fucking starve and die. And I'm just like, we can't just assume that everybody wants to not be left alone. Because every time we fucking act and do something, we're accused of not leaving you alone. We're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. And this is why police are in an impossible fucking situation. On top of just what the fundamentals of police are. As the structure in which we have chosen to uniform our local security protective forces. Hey, what's up, Parsons? On the other side is the older generation, whose members are no less confused. If they are not vocal or conscious, it may be because they can escape to a past when the world was simpler. They can still cling to the old values in the simple hope that everything will work out somehow, some way. That the younger generation will straighten out with the passing of time. Unable to come to grips with the world as it is, they retreat in any confrontation with the younger generation with that infuriating cliche. When you get older, you'll understand. I know, it's hysterical, and it is true. It is true. Unless you don't get older. Right? I had to change what I was doing. That change is a measurement of age. So I got older. One wonders at their reaction if some youngster were to reply, when you get younger, which will never be. Then you'll understand, so of course, you'll never understand. Right? And now here we are in 2025, and, right, he was wrong, right? It's just a feeling. It's just, you're just going through the normal kind of generational fucking pessimism. It's just black pill. It's just black pilling. That's all this fucking is. Socialist black pilling. Right? Will never be. Then you'll understand. So of course you'll never understand. Those are the older generation who claim a desire to understand. Say, when I talk to my kids or their friends, I'll say to them, look, I believe that you have to tell me what you have to tell me is important, and I respect it. You call me a square and say that I'm not with it, or I don't know where it's at, or I don't know where the scene is, and all the rest of the words you use. Well, I'm going to agree with you, so suppose you tell me, what do you want? What do you mean when you say, I want to do my thing? What the hell is your thing? You say you want a better world, like what? Like, I fucking ranted like this on drive streams. I do make rants like this, right? This is what's fun. This is funny to me. Like this, maybe this book will be like this weird mirror, where it's like, oh wait, I actually do all these things. Kinda. Well, I didn't do that. I didn't burn that place down. I don't know. We'll see what's actually in the book, right? But at the very least, I can appreciate that, you're trying to capture lightning in a bottle. You're trying to capture this attitude before you become jaded, right? He's trying to stand, he's being Lucifer. He's trying to stand there and say, hey, would you like a little spark of Mount Olympus? What do you mean? Do you think? What the hell is your thing? Don't tell. Okay, and don't tell me a world of peace and love and all the rest of that stuff, because people are people, as you will find out when you get older. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say anything about when you get older. I really do respect what you have to say. Now, why don't you answer me? Do you know what you want? Do you know what you're talking about? Why can't we get together? And that is what we call the generation gap. Exactly. I can't get together with other people 45 years old. let alone getting together with the millennials or the Gen Xers as I sit in my cuspy little bitching throne. I get to sit here and bitch at the cusp of generations. All right. What the present generation wants is what all generations have always wanted. A meaning, a sense of what the world and life are, a chance to strive for some sort of order. If the young were now writing our Declaration of Independence, they would begin when, in the course of human events, yada, 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 and their bill of particulars would range from Vietnam to our Black, Chicano, and Puerto Rican ghettos to the migrant workers to Appalachia. They didn't put Appalachia in there. Appalachia's too white. But, as far as, so to the hate, ignorance, disease, and starvation in the world. Okay, well then he goes to hate, ignorant. Maybe he's putting Appalachia in with the negatives. Anyway, such a bill of particulars. I mean, listen, man, you want to deal with the Appalachian people, you have to actually go to Appalachia. That means you have to probably be there at a time after sunset. Have fun planning your revolution in Appalachia being haunted by cryptids. You enjoy that. Those Appalachians are fearless motherfuckers. Please go out and fucking taunt the Appalachians. Such a bill of particulars would emphasize the absurdity of human affairs and the forlornness and emptiness, the fearful loneliness that comes from not knowing if there is any meaning to our lives. When they talk of values, they're asking for a reason. They are searching for an answer, at least for a time, to man's greatest question. Why am I here? The young react to their chaotic world in different ways. Some panic and run, rationalizing the system is going to collapse anyway of its own rot and corruption, and so they're copping out, going hippie or yippie, taking drugs, trying communes, anything to escape. Yeah. A lot of us have been there. And, it ain't nothing wrong with it. You're just looking for a healthy group of people to associate with. That's all the fuck you're really trying to do. Or you're trying to go hermit because you're more interested in finding yourself. Right? I was jumping between the hermitness to the, I guess nobody really likes the communes. Everybody wants to be communist, but nobody wants to make a commune work. That's ironic. And he's right that they are trying to escape, which is why they fail. They would succeed if they weren't trying to escape. You're supposed to hold your ground, especially if you have fertile soil. Do not let them chase you into the desert. Others went for pointless, sure loser confrontations so that they could fortify their rationalization and say, well, we tried and did our part, and then they copped out too. Others, sick with guilt and not knowing where to turn or what to do, went berserk. These were the weathermen and their like. They took the grand cop-out suicide. To these I have nothing to say or give but pity, and in some cases contempt, for such as those who leave their dead comrades and take off for Algeria or other points. Okay, I respect that he resents people that abandon their fellow man. What I have to say in this book is not the arrogance of unsolicited advice. It is the experience and counsel that so many young people have questioned me about through all-night sessions on hundreds of campuses in America. It is for those young radicals who are committed to the fight, committed to life. And nobody worried about his fucking love of freedom getting somebody hurt or killed, took their gun rights and blew his head off after doing so many campuses across America? having big conversations with people. I don't know if they're big. I'm assuming, which is why he is so discussed in the various underground networks. Remember, we are talking about revolution, not revelation. Ah, right. Well, you have to have the revelation if you want your revolution to be an elevation. You can miss the target by shooting too high as well as too low. First, there are no rules for revolution any more than there are rules for love or rules for happiness. Well, yeah, there's no rules to breaking something. That's great, you've broken something. Now that it's broken, have the problems just miraculously stopped now that you've broken the thing? Okay, defund the police has given us a simulation of a copless society as morality stands in the inner city today. Some people are reporting that it's great, we love being left alone. Other people are reporting vandalism, robberies, and murders beyond comprehension. Anybody can be paid to say anything, and you don't have to have problems outside of one or two city blocks to turn into a massive concept of a disaster in everyone's mind for an entire city or borough of a city. Doesn't take much, considering what you're not going to limit yourself to if you already have jurisdictional limits. So there are rules. There are rules. Because if you don't rebuild, and rebuild with something that the remaining body politic is going to fucking like and accept, then all you've done is laid waste for nihilism. Alright. So there are no rules for revolution any more than there are rules for love or rules for happiness. I would contest that there are rules for love and there are rules for happiness. Because otherwise, it wouldn't matter what we did for love. And it matters a great deal what you do for love. If I love a thing, if I love a person or a creature, the reciprocation of that love matters. Right? I don't get things like, quote, little hugs or something from my iguana. It's not the way iguanas are, really. And I don't have the kind of iguana that's just like, I dangle a piece of food and he just runs over to me like a dog. Right? He doesn't have that kind of attitude. But when he's in a good mood and I can fucking hold him, it's the way he feels liking how I hold him, which is the reciprocation that I want from the reptile, because that's what I expect, and I only want that as the communication that I'm doing it right, because I enjoy it, because I think he's a cool creature. and I feel good with my cool creature. But anyway, my point is that there are rules, but the rules are kind of a mystery. Like, there are different rules for how you get noticed by different women, how you become interesting to different women, and whether you are interested in engaging on those rules. I've thought a lot about this as I've looked there and I said to myself, if I spent my time with more normie shit on the mind to be the stuff I enjoyed talking about, so that way it would be my basis for conversation with a woman, I could probably get way more friends, score more women, but I can't do it. Something inside me says it is beneath me to elevate the stuff I like for fun over the stuff like this that I do that's so fucking serious. Right? And there was a certain point where I reflected on how I look to other people. I said, like, man, if you don't understand exactly why this subject matter is internally enriching and exciting for me, then I come off like a buzzkill somehow. Right? Because it doesn't matter how excited I get. There's something that you can't get excited about because it's almost like, you know, it's not just that you may think that this shows me that I have an ideology that is against your ideology. And an ideology that's and makes me a personal threat because of my ideology. Anyway, you get the idea. I could go on that tangent for a hot minute, but I gotta focus. But there are rules for radicals. Aha! Haha! He said the title. He said the title. It's like when they say the title of the movie in the movie. Right. Because, like, this is... Well, let me put it to you. I'm not even, like... If I'm having a conversation with a girl, right? Yeah, I want her to know that I do have some of that guy analytical brain. Probably because, I think she would want to know that I have that because it tells her a thing or two about intelligence capabilities, yada, yada, yada. But that's not what she wants as the presentation of me, right? The presentation of me is, it's much more different, right? And it's the play. It's the back and forth play. It's just like she throws some yin at me. And then it reciprocates with my inner yin. And I give her the yang to that yinning. And that reciprocates with her inner yang. That she then yins back at me, right? And it's just like, it's the feminine side of the conversation synchronizing with the masculine side of the conversation. Anyway. There are certain central concepts of action in human politics that operate regardless of the scene of the time. To know these is basic to a pragmatic attack on the system, but these rules make the difference between being a realistic radical and being a rhetorical one who uses the tired old words and slogans, calls the police pig or white fascist racist or motherfucker, and has so stereotyped himself that others react by saying, oh, he's one of those, and then promptly turn off. Well, I guess my leftist friends don't read this book because there's some fucking wisdom for you. There's some wisdom for you, yeah. You know, it's just like you're using a crude vernacular as part of a fucking superficial rhetoric because you can't do anything with your desire to change with all of the perceived abuse, exploitation, and I don't know, the lack of things. I don't like. It's you would almost think you'd almost be surprised that the 80s were a thing if you listened to this guy and you didn't know that the 80s were coming, right? Because the 70s things did seem like shit in all sorts of places. Any place that wasn't new, and there were lots of places that just weren't new, right? You know, like urban decay was setting in. Something that happened, throughout the work ethic infrastructure of the country through the period of time that the social cohesion broke down during the hippie movement. You get the idea, right? All of this stuff is a price that you pay for ignoring problems and throwing overcompensated brutality or neglect at those problems until they backlash on you and you never fucking correct a reasonable social order out of all of the harm that you blatantly allowed. This failure of many of our younger activists to understand the art of communication has been disastrous. Even the most elementary grasp of the fundamental idea that one communicates within the experience of his audience and gives full respect to the other's values would have ruled our attacks on the American flag. Would have ruled out attacks on the American flag. Responsible organizers would have known that it is the establishment that has betrayed the flag, while the flag itself remains the glorious symbol of America's hopes and aspirations. And he would have conveyed this message to his audience. On another level of communication, humor is essential, for through humor, much is accepted that would have been rejected if presented seriously. So yes, the left is lacking effective humor, meaning they don't understand their own issue well enough to put it into a simple, direct, subconscious bypass. They have to give you a whole explanatory word bubble next to the symbolic picture to get it through, and there's nothing witty, clever about it. It doesn't hit a poetic beat, and it has no punchline. It's just intellectually snobbish statistics overlaid with the meaning of what supports your argument, and you've used it as a straw man, right? And then, of course, he's talking about the whole attacks on American flags. We just had the whole flag banning controversy as part of the media spin cycle during the various riots, and protests against ICE going across the nation. But the problem is that, there was so much violence incited around the flag burnings because they did all that. It's basically it's more like an arson charge, right? It's really just there to bypass the argument because you're playing semantics with natural law. Because the truth of the matter is that You're threatening with arson, and that is not protected speech because of the circumstances by which you burn the flag. As just like, here I am in the street, I can just recklessly do that because it is assumed that you can trust me because I'm not burning anything down. So on and so on. See, because you hear all these leftists, they've been coached some sort of game in their head, and then they spew this stuff out, and they think it gives them the legal immunity, right? Just like I was coached foolishly on the games of sovereign citizenship, and was spewing that shit out, talking to judges and cops, and getting this long, withdrawn, painful fucking process that bought me time but got me nowhere. Until eventually I had to surrender to the system. This is a sad and lonely generation. It laughs too little, and this, too, is tragic. They say that every 10 years. It's like climate change, right? It's just like, oh my God, this generation's so nihilist, right? Look, the media pushed them out in front of you, right? They pushed them out in front of you. They forced you to look at it as the predominance of the culture. And you accepted it because you didn't know how to argue against it. There was too much victim shielding going on, right? Throw the victim in front of you as a shield, and then throw yourself in front of the victim to protect them, even though that person is really there to represent a more nefarious agenda that you don't fully understand, that was planned long ago, and you were manipulated into the co-signed agreement of, as you chose not to question anything you learned in the university that has given you a credential that you think means shit to anybody other than your job application. For the real radical, doing his thing is to do the social thing, for and with people, in a world where everything is so interrelated that one feels helpless to know where or how to grab, hold, and act. Defeat sets in. For years, there have been people who found society too overwhelming and have withdrawn, concentrated on doing their own thing. Generally, we have put them into mental hospitals and diagnosed them as schizophrenics. If the real radical finds that having long hair sets up psychological barriers to communication and organization, he cuts his hair. Hey guys, am I being understood? Okay. Can you hear me through my hair? I love it. Anyway. Oh my gosh. If I were organizing in an Orthodox Jewish community, I would not walk in there eating a ham sandwich unless I wanted to be rejected, so I could have an excuse to cop out. So Saul's Jewish, right? But you gotta, Saul's probably more along the zealot spectrum, the liberal spectrum, right? This is why he cares about the radicals, right? He's he's probably a more reformist Jew, right? He might be a cultural Jew. He might be a crypto Jew, but cultural, right? He's inherited the tradition, which I think that is part of the crypto Jew thing, or that he is a legitimate Jew, but he's basically an atheist or some sort of an agnostic, and he just runs through the motions and lives his life. Which for many Jewish communities is perfectly fine, because they know that doing that stuff is good for you, and it's better that at least you have that. right? But then there's other Jews that get viciously angry that there are Jews like him. And then all those Jews start using all that money you bitch about to hire other people to fucking protest the other Jews. And then they may be the kind of Jew that also hires people to counter those protests. And now you've got two straw armies fighting on behalf of two Jews. Just because both of them had assets and allies. And competing with each other. And legally organized to, I don't know, to fight each other in campaignings and all that stuff or whatever, right? We certainly need healthy competition and in the world that matters, and we need not be distracted. But yeah, you know, this is, we'll see how things, I find like he's doing, we'll see how things go after the prologue, right? Because it might be that the prologue is like 100% yes, and then you start going through the actual chapters, and you're like, no, that's horrible, man. We'll see what happens. Okay, my thing, if I want to organize, is solid communication with people in the community. Lacking communication, I am in reality silent. Throughout history, silence has been regarded as assent. In this case, assent to the system. As an organizer, I start from where the world is, as it is, not as I would like it to be. That we accept the world as it is does not in any way sense weaken our desire to change it into what we believe it should be. Once again, I agree. I function this way. This is why I talked about Mark Passio's ideals of natural law, and I make my arguments about means to an end. Our desire to change it into what we believe it should be. It is necessary to begin where the world is if we are going to change it to what we think it should be. That means working in the system. Okay, so working in the system. It's funny how, like, where does this reputation come from? Right? Now, part of his fucking logic is probably for shrewd professional radicals, too. I'd imagine there might be rules for the streets and rules for the office, if you know what I mean. There's another reason for working inside the system. Dostoevsky said that taking a new step is what people fear most. Any revolutionary change must be preceded by a passive, affirmative, non-challenging attitude towards change among the mass of our people. They must feel so frustrated, so defeated, so lost, so futureless in the prevailing system that they are willing to let go of the past and chance the future. Once again, I did this. So did everybody going woke. You know, everybody on the left and the right fucking did this. Everybody did this, just about. Right? Many boomers, a whole bunch of the Gen X media people. Damn straight, almost all the millennials. And then Gen Z getting its legs in during the pandemic. Right? So anyway. Any revolutionary change must be preceded by a passive, affirmative, non-challenging attitude towards change among the mass of our people. They must feel so frustrated, so I'm sorry, I already, yes. So this acceptance is the Reformation essential to any revolution. To bring on this Reformation requires that the organizers work inside the system among not only the middle class, but the 40 of American families, more than 70 million people, whose income range from $5,000 to $10,000 a year. Okay, so he puts that into specific terms, and then you can adjust that for inflation as the book ages. They cannot be dismissed by labeling them blue collar or hard hat. They will not continue to be relatively passive and slightly challenging. If we fail to communicate with them, if we don't encourage them to form alliances with us, they will move to the right. Maybe they will anyway, but let's not let it happen by default. So, he wants these hardworking people to, okay, so he probably, if he's doing this kind of thing, it means he's probably he would be not interested. I have a feeling that he would not be interested in grooming guys to be more like women, right? Because if he's more of a traditional communist, right, hammer and sickle. I mean, they all act like okay, commies, you got to work, man. Your flag is a flag of labors. You have a hammer and a sickle on your flag. Those are labor tools. That's what you wanted. The hammer and the sickle. To pound and to cut. You don't act like you want to pound and cut with your life. You act like you want to get super chats for playing video games with your life. That's what you fucking act like. But anyway. And so, yeah, a guy working in a hard hat like me is not going to respect your movement. It doesn't look very enticing. It's just like I have a certain faith in myself, and I'm not trying to be selfish, but I don't know if you guys are usefully contributable to my needs. I like the idea of working with some people, but I don't think it's you guys, right? You're going to have to also accept things like that, right? Because you're not going to find a uniform whatever. And I mean, granted, he knows that, right? But I'm also just talking about me, who has had a tremendous amount of evangelistic attitudes after I had walked away from Catholicism, right? With Christianity having a certain effect on me, but me not wanting to really be conservative. It's very interesting what was going through my head, but some of the stuff is still going through my head because it was the right stuff. To bring on this reformation requires that the organizers were... Oh, I'm sorry, I read that already. Alinsky is not let the... By default, yeah. Our youth are impatient with the preliminaries that are essential to purposeful action. Effective organization is thwarted by the desire for instant and dramatic change, or as I have phrased it elsewhere, the demand for revelation rather than revolution. It's the kind of thing we see in playwriting. The first act introduces the characters and the plot. In the second act, the plot and characters are developed as the play strives to hold the audience's attention. In the final act, good and evil have their dramatic confrontation and resolution. The present generation wants to go right into the third act, skipping the first two, in which case there is no play, nothing but confrontation for confrontation's sake, a flare-up, and a back to darkness. To build a powerful organization takes time. It is tedious, but that's the way the game is played. If you want to play and not just yell, kill the umpire, or eat the rich. but very, like, okay, right, so like this is about, he's thinking in long game. Very smart, right? Um, but he's also talking about, I like, I guess he's talking about an organic movement. But then again, what is an organic movement if, like, if you've made a decision that you can trust, like, some administrator at your school, and now your school administrator is a radical organizer, you know what I'm trying to say, right? And what is that? What is that effective limit of free speech? Because it's a shame if somebody who's got some aspect of a good message takes free speech too far, where it was not going to get any more effective than it was going to get, but you tried to make it more effective by getting extraordinarily rude and disruptive, perhaps a bit threatening, which, could be telling us that you're trying to trend things towards violence because that is projecting that you do not accept that we don't agree with you, or at least that we don't agree with you fucking today. What is the alternative to working inside the system? A mess of rhetorical garbage about burn the system down, yippee yells of do it or do your thing. What else? Bombs, sniping, silence when police are killed, and screams of murdering fascist pigs when others are killed, attacking and baiting the police, public suicide, power comes out of the barrel of a gun is an absurd rallying cry. Wow, like, I'm actually shocked, considering the reputation of this book, that he makes rational statements like this. I thought he was going to be, like, saying, like, like, come on, man, you've got to really lean into bothering the police or something, right? When the other side has all the guns, Lenin was a pragmatist. When he returned to what was then Petrograd from exile, he said that the Bolsheviks stood for getting power through the ballot, but would reconsider after they got the guns. Militant mouthings, spouting quotes from Mao, Castro, and Che Guevara, which are as germane to our highly technological, computerized, cybernetic, nuclear-powered mass media society as a stagecoach on a jet runway at Kennedy Airport. Interesting how he said cybernetic. We're talking about like the early 1970s. Let us, in the name of radical pragmatism, not forget that in our system, with all its repressions, we can still speak out and denounce the administration, attack its policies, work to build an opposition political base. True, there is a government harassment, but there still is that relative freedom to fight. So here is where he's making a fatal flaw. Here, he wants to really play the game. He wants a political fucking base, right? Even this is a step too far. Establishing yourself is the first step. Establishing yourself. Let us, in the name of radical pragmatism, not forget that in our system, with all its repressions, we can still speak out and denounce the administration. I'm sorry. Come on now. True, there is government. Sorry. I can attack my government, try to organize to change it. That's more than I can do in Moscow, Peking, or Havana. Remember the reaction of the Red Guard to the Cultural Revolution and the fate of the Chinese college students. Just a few of the violent episodes of bombings or courtroom shootout that we have experienced here would have resulted in a sweeping purge and mass executions in Russia, China, or Cuba. Let's keep some perspective. Well, right. They're going to massacre you if there's 50 of you. Maybe 100 of you or whatever. Like, if you're pulling January 6 numbers, they're not fucking killing you. Right? If you were pulling George Floyd riot numbers, they're not going to fucking kill you. Right? The problem is that you're still not going to succeed, as everybody is learning. January 6th was a failure. George Floyd riots were a failure. The Tesla vandalism campaign was a failure. These little protest groups attacking ICE facilities. Pathetic. Right? And nobody has your back because you're wrong. We're seeing that this is just the normal shit that we expect from ICE, with the unusual circumstances of sanctuary city nonsense. On top of, 4 years of George Soros foreign policy. Worse than anything in the prior administrations. We will start with the system because there is no other place to start from except political lunacy. No, the place you start is your own heart. You set your heart straight, right? This is all existential. Nothing is looking at the radical. Like, he's not saying, hey, you radical, do you have your shit together? Right? I mean, he does. He does talk about having your shit together, but he's overviewing it, right? So he's telling you, get your shit together, then come back to this book. But I'm not going to tell you how to put your shit together. Or maybe he does that in a prior book. I don't know. He doesn't do it in this book, I assume. It is important for those of us who want revolutionary change to understand that revolution must be preceded by a reformation. Okay. To assume that a political revolution can survive without the supporting base of a popular reformation is to ask for the impossible in politics. Men don't like to step abruptly out of the security of familiar experience. They need a bridge to cross from their own experience to a new way. A revolutionary organizer must shake up the prevailing patterns of their lives, agitate, create disenchantment and discontent with the current values to produce, if not a passion for change, at least a passive, affirmative, non-challenging climate. The revolution was effected before the war commenced, John Adams wrote. The revolution was in the hearts and minds of the people. This radical change in the principal opinions, sentiments, and affections of the people was the real American Revolution. A revolution without a prior reformation would collapse or become a totalitarian tyranny. You don't say. A reformation means that masses of our people have reached the point of disillusionment with past ways and values. They don't know what will work, but they do know that the prevailing system is self-defeating, frustrating, and hopeless. They won't act for change, but won't strongly oppose those who do. The time is then ripe for revolution. Those who, for whatever combination of reasons, encourage the opposite of reformation become the unwitting allies of the far political right. Parts of the far left have gone so far in the political circle that they are now all but indistinguishable from the extreme right. It reminds me of the days when Hitler knew on the scene was excused for his actions by humanitarians on the ground of paternal rejection and childhood drama, when there are people who espouse the assassination of Senator Robert Kennedy, or the Tate murders, or the Marin County Courthouse kidnappings and killings, or the University of Wisconsin bombing and killing as revolutionary acts. When we are dealing with people who are merely hiding psychosis behind a political mask, the masses of people recoil with horror and say, "Our way is bad and we were willing to let it change, but certainly not for this murderous madness. No matter how bad things are now, they are better than that." Now, you see, this is an argument. The left likes to make the argument that the right will say that about every time there's something going on with a mass shooting or an assassination. But the truth is, these incidents happen so infrequently that they aren't a real, actual issue when you compare it to the aggregate of violent crime in any country, any gun-free country. Right? And I mean, the Ukrainian girl was stabbed. And unfortunately, no level of weapons rights was going to protect her from the world in her cell phone she was living in when she got in that train. Her head was at home with her boyfriend already, the person on the other line. She could have had a fucking Desert Eagle. It wouldn't have fucking mattered. She wasn't assuming anybody in the world would ever be a threat to her, because of the naivete that we've entrained into the culture. So, they begin to turn back. They regress into acceptance of a coming massive repression in the name of law and order. In the midst of the gassing and violence by the Chicago Police and National Guard during the 1968 Democratic Convention, many students asked me, "Do you still believe we should try to work inside our system?" These were students who had been with Eugene McCarthy in New Hampshire and followed him across the country. Some had been with Robert Kennedy when he was killed in Los Angeles. Many of the tears that were shed in Chicago were not from gas. Mr. Alinsky, we fought in primary after primary, and the people voted no on Vietnam. Look at that. Convention. They're not paying any attention to the vote. Look at your police and the army. You still want us to work in the system? Give me a second here. Prologue is fucking huge. Alright. I want to get through the rest of this prologue, but I need to take a break. So, we're going to take a break. Let me pick a song. I still have the playlist open. Where's my playlist? We were listening to Pennywise's Fuck Authority from Land of the Free. But there's a whole playlist here. What we got? Hold on a second. This is an anti-capitalist playlist on Spotify. Here we go. Get back up to the top. Right? No, I don't want to do that one though. Okay. All right. We're going to do some Anti-Flag, Christian Nationalist. this is the musical move that's appropriate, you know?
History is rife with the likes of you. History is littered with the likes of you. We'll never back down in the face of the likes of you. Never back down in the face of the likes of you. You're no better than the rest. White neo-Christian nationalist, religious liar, litmus test. White neo-fascist supremacist. Whoa, 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 whoa. From the crusade of a century, with a vengeance in your veins for your enemies. Hate in your heart and division in your eye. You got Chris to convert, you got lies to entice. And I can show you a compassion and authoritarian, corrupted patriotism, sort of nationalism. Your theocratic beliefs are moral weapon full of venom, Armageddon. You're no better than the rest. White neo-Christian nationalist, religious liar, litmus test. White neo-fascist supremacist. And we reject theocracy. We reject your view of the world. You're no better than the rest. White neo-Christian nationalist. We all know who you are, yeah. We all know who you are. We all know who you are. You're no better than the rest. White neo-Christian nationalist, religious liar, litmus test. White neo-fascist terrorist. You're no better than the rest. White neo-Christian nationalist, religious liar, litmus test. White neo-fascist supremacist. We all know who you are. 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 We all know who you are.
There we go. We're good. We're good. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. Oh man. I wonder how many of these bands would not like me. Alright? Because, you know, it doesn't matter if you're not racist. If you're a capitalist, well, you see, capitalism is inherently racist. Well, your opinion of capitalism is inherently racist, is what it is. But anyway. Let's see. Pop that back on. It hurt me to see the American army with drawn bayonets advancing on American boys and girls, but the answer I gave the young radicals seemed to me the only realistic one. Do one of three things. One, go find a wailing wall and feel sorry for yourselves. Why are people dumping on this guy again? Anyway, two, go psycho and start bombing, but this will only swing people to the right. See, obviously they haven't read this guy's book. So, who are the human beings that have been living by this book that I need to fucking worry about? Because I seem to be worried about the guys that are not taking his advice thus far. 3, learn a lesson. Go home. Organize. Build power. And at the next convention, you be the delegates. Right? Anyway, remember, once you organize people around something as commonly agreed upon as pollution, then an organized people is on the move. From there, it's a short and natural step to political pollution, to Pentagon pollution. Right. Well, look, single issue is never a fucking winning thing for anything other than, like, a piece of legislation. That's typically all you're really getting out of single issue campaigning. It's very if he thinks you can just evolve it from pollution to political to Pentagon, you're not going to evolve it with most of the people of the prior step. You're going to go through these transitional steps where you're going to lose the people that don't care about the political, and then you're going to lose people again on the Pentagon level. Because that's not what they're in for. And we don't live in a black and white world, right? I mean, he's obviously, he's trying to serve liberalism, right? He's trying to serve the left. He doesn't want anybody going to the right. He's like, don't do that. Like, I like how he's aware enough to say, if you behave poorly, you're going to make more right-wingers. This makes him that's good. It's good that he's saying that, right? Because we've seen nothing but the opposite of Saul's advice, and Saul's right. All the right-wingers made by their bad behavior. All because they chose to live in the realm of effect and to react to all their triggers. So if somebody was weaponizing this book with anybody like that, they obviously were twisting something along the lines of the spirit of which he wrote this book. We'll see. Once again, this is the fucking prologue, and already I can't believe I'm agreeing so much with what I hear. It is not enough just to elect your candidates. Right, like, see, he's living in the illusions that elections matter, right? Which, the leaders of the world denying you what you want is part of that. So, he wants to play the game. All you're going to do is get the political power, and then you're going to realize how little you are the catalyst for change in that position. Because it's one thing to have attained the power of the office. It's another thing for that office to have power over the other offices on issues. Because that's just part of it, right? Bernie Sanders stands alone in his particularities. And by the merit of just trying to stay there in the Senate, has sold out on a bazillion occasions. You must keep the pressure on. Radicals should keep in mind Franklin Roosevelt's response to a reform delegation. Okay, you've convinced me. Now go on out and bring pressure on me. Action comes from keeping the heat on. So, I mean, like, okay, so, yeah. So, Roosevelt told the lie that the delegation around him had convinced him of a thing, and that, like, now go out from where I am, and continue to press your influence upon me so I can do this thing. Like, I like it, but you have to force me to do it, is what Roosevelt is saying. You have to force me to do the thing that I'd like to do. I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe the only reason why Trump is doing any good, like RFK Jr.'s policies, as a great example, to be honest, as far as means to an ends idea is concerned, maybe that's proof, right? So, it's like Trump's sitting there. He's not your friend. He's not your enemy. He's kind of more of a Hierophant character when you think about it, you know. And to serve the dark hearts, he has a seat at the table with Bill Gates. To serve the light hearts, he has a seat at the table with RFK. But you know, it's all it's all a fucking game, man, right? No politician can sit on a hot issue if you make it hot enough. As for Vietnam, I would like to see our nation be the first in the history of man to publicly say, we were wrong, what we did was horrible, we got in and kept getting in deeper and deeper, and at every step we invented new reasons for staying. And I think, honestly, you know what, I think he achieved that. I think we did end up doing that, right? Now, Republicans will still say that it was stupid that we lost the war because of the way that we fought it. Right? But that is the hand that we were dealt. Republicans, they got a right to complain about that for a certain mark of time, but time has to pass and you have to accept that there's nothing you can retroactively do to fix any of that. Right? What was unfortunate is how quickly we wanted to abandon the lessons of Vietnam with Afghanistan and Iraq. And it really, we really just saw the complete failure of America's moral character in the manner in which we went back to that kind of conduct as on the military side of our culture. We have paid part of the price in 44,000 dead Americans. There is nothing we can ever do to make it up to the people of Indochina or to our own people, but we will try. We believe that our world has come of age so that it is no longer a sign of weakness or defeat to abandon a childish pride and vanity to admit we were wrong. Such an admission would shake up the foreign policy concepts of all nations and open the door to a new international order. This is our alternative to Vietnam. Anything else is the old makeshift patchwork. If this were to happen, Vietnam may even have been somewhat worth it. A final word on our system. The democratic ideal springs from the ideas of liberty, equality, majority rule through free elections, protection of the rights of minorities, and freedom to subscribe to multiple loyalties in matters of religion, economics, and politics rather than to a total loyalty to the state. Once again, what's wrong with all of this? What's wrong with all of this other than he's like, I'm still waiting for where everything is so horrible, right? Because I can't rationalize that he wants to do anything horrible here. He seems to care about natural law. He seems to care about the wisdom of not doing irrational criminal behavior to try and achieve your means. Don't waste your fucking protesting. The spirit of democracy is the idea of importance and worth in the individual, and faith in the kind of world where the individual can achieve as much as his potential as possible. Okay, individuality. Once again, I got no argument here. Hey, what's up, Saniko? Great dangers always accompany great opportunities. The possibility of destruction is always implicit in the act of creation. Thus, the greatest enemy of individual freedom is the individual himself. From the beginning, the weakness as well as the strength of the democratic ideal has been the people. People cannot be free unless they are willing to sacrifice some of their interests to guarantee the freedom of others. The price of democracy is the ongoing pursuit of the common good by all of the people. 135 years ago, Tocqueville gravely warned that unless individual citizens were regularly involved in the actions of governing themselves, self-government would pass from the scene. Citizen participation is the animating spirit and force in a society predicating on voluntarism. Okay. I can respect that. Hold on a second. I don't know why this had a little star next to it. I thought there'd be an annotation somewhere. Anyway. We are not here concerned with the people who profess the democratic faith, but yearn for the dark security of dependency, where they can be spared the burden of decisions, reluctant to grow up, or incapable of doing so. They want to remain children and be cared for by others. Those who can should be encouraged to grow. For the others, the fault lies not in the system, but in themselves. Here we are desperately concerned with the vast mass of our people who, thwarted through lack of interest or opportunity, or both, do not participate in the endless responsibilities. Oh, okay, here's where the annotation is. Okay, I'm going to read that. Of citizenship and are resigned to lives determined by others. Okay, so it must not be forgotten that it is especially dangerous to enslave men in the minor details of life. For my own part, I should be inclined to think freedom less necessary in great things than in little ones, if it were possible to be secure of the one without the possessing of the other. Subjection in minor affairs breaks out every day and is felt by the whole community indiscriminately. It does not drive men to resistance, but it crosses them at every turn, till they are led to surrender the exercise of their will. Thus their spirit is gradually broken and their character enervated, or as that obedience which is exacted on a few important but rare occasions only exhibits servitude at certain intervals, and throws the burden of it upon a small number of men. It is vain to summon a people which has been rendered so dependent on the central power to choose from time to time the representatives of that power. This rare and brief exercise of their free choice, however important it may be, will not prevent them from gradually losing the faculties of thinking, feeling, and acting for themselves, and thus gradually falling below the level of humanity. Alex de Tocqueville, Democracy in America. Okay, look at that. Another warning about cognitive decline, too. So he sounds like he actually does have a best interest for the increase of humanity at heart here, right? It's interesting. Now, I still don't quite understand the context that's being framed in this second passage. What the fuck does he mean by their minor affairs? Doing laundry? Stopping to help grandma open the pickle jar? What the fuck are we talking about minor affairs? Filling out paperwork at your job? What the fuck is a minor affair that is beneath you? If you are of individual responsibility, yeah, all affairs are your affairs to be handled. You handle your minor and your major shit. So, that's where I would disagree. My life's a mess because I'm alone. If I was maybe had a partner, my life wouldn't be such a mess. But yeah, because I think about that. And I just have to live with it. Some minor affairs fall through. There will still be plenty of things I didn't get done today. All right. So, the endless responsibilities to lose your identity as a citizen of democracy is but a step from losing your identity as a person. People react to this frustration by not acting at all. The separation of people from the routine daily function of citizenship is heartbreaking in a democracy. It is a grave situation when a people resign their citizenship or when a resident of a great city, though he may desire to take a hand, lacks the means to participate. So, this is here sitting and it's the question of, is it worth it as you being an influence in your local body politic, right? Like, don't give up on your civic functions. He's not, I'm a little bit more of a pessimist than him, right? Certainly the anarchist attitude in me. But, perhaps he is correct. Because, like I said, means to an ends, right? Maybe that's all he's doing here. Maybe he's like me. Maybe I'm just like Saul Alinsky and I didn't know it. Wouldn't that be fucking weird? That citizen sinks further into apathy, anonymity, and depersonalization. The result is that he comes to depend on public authority, and a state of civic sclerosis sets in. You see, he doesn't have quite the grasp of it. He thinks that there's only one result that comes from that level of disengagement. There's more to it, right? He's kind of talking about like the social welfare incel, right? That's what he's talking about, the social welfare incel. I'm not a social welfare incel, and I am dissociated from their system. I'm very socially apt, right? But then again, it was harder. I was socially apt, but it was harder to be social because people that wanted to have the conversation of mind stimulated the way I did, right? I started to feel like I was insulting people's intelligences around them, just assuming they wanted to learn something from me, because I was starting to realize that I had learned a lot more things than other people, and have, and was making my own conclusions about things, especially if no one seemed to know that there was more information about a subject, right? Like you thought you read the one or two best books on UFOs in the 90s, and then you're just like, oh man, look at all this stuff that is what it is about UFOs and yada yada yada, and you learned a whole lot of actual stuff in there. But it didn't matter. Because nobody knows what the fuck you're talking about. So anyway, from time to time there have been external enemies at our gates. There has always been the enemy within, the hidden and malignant inertia that foreshadows more certain destruction to our life and future than any nuclear warhead. There can be no darker or more devastating tragedy than the death of a man's faith in himself and in his power to direct his future. I salute the present generation. Hang on to one of your most precious parts of youth, laughter. Don't lose it, as many of you seem to have done. You need it. Together we may find some of what we're looking for: laughter, beauty, love, and the chance to create. Once again, this is all good. That all sounds like good stuff. This sounds like something that Owen Benjamin would co-sign if he didn't fucking tribute Lucifer. Which is the irony of it all. Oh, look at that. He quotes the Bible. The Burble, right up front. Anyway, I'm going to call it here, and then we'll be actually in Chapter 1. On the 21st page. Let me see. It's 209 pages, so do we actually have like 109 pages left? Like, or is there a whole bunch of blanks? No, then it goes all the way down here, goes to the about the author. We believe it. Yeah, no, just about. Yeah, it'll be like the whole fucking thing, effectively. Okay, we're good. Alright, so that won't be long. I'm thinking to myself, I'm still reading Dune, by the way. So this is more like a mini, this is like, it's 200 pages. So like, this is an easy book. Okay? Alright. I'll catch you guys later. Thanks.